Executive Director of the Wisconsin Council of Churches. And on behalf of all of the program partners and everybody working on this project, I'm delighted to welcome you to this Awaken Dane event. This is the big event that we have been dreaming about for over a year now. Awaken Dane was brought to life by this collaborative partnership among several organizations, the Wisconsin Council of Churches, Collaboration Project, University of Dubuque Theological Seminary, and Upper House. And we're glad to have funding from Lilly Endowment Incorporated. We have this vision together about a movement of churches awakening to God's call, forming life-giving friendships and partnerships, and growing in love for our home communities. All of us together have had various ways of working together. And so it's a delight to have the chance to, instead of just working one-on-one, be together on this one big project. So we'll take a chance to introduce one another, and then we'll have an opportunity for you all to get to know one another just a little bit. We'll have a chance to address some questions you may have about the program, and save your questions up, put them in the chat box. We'll hear a little bit more about logistics as we go along. So by way of introducing one of our partners, I'd like to introduce you to my colleague, John Terrell from Upper House. We actually started working together a few years ago when Upper House hosted an event on Howard Thurman. So, John.
Thanks, Carrie. Yes, it was actually 3 years ago this week. And as I scroll through the names and look at so many familiar faces, there are so many wonderful partnerships within this community. And so we really look forward to getting to know each one of you and hopefully journeying with you in the life of this grant. So it's my privilege, before introducing some of the other team members, I would like to open us in prayer. And as Carrie has mentioned, Howard Thurman, I would like to open us in one of his prayers. If you don't know who Howard Thurman is, he was a great Baptist minister, a theologian, a civil rights activist, started what many believe is the first multicultural church on the West Coast, I think in the San Francisco area in 1944, has quite a legacy, and we still benefit from the good work that he did in the mid-20th century. So if you would join me in prayer, this is a prayer that he prayed, and he prayed it personally, but I'm going to shift it into a corporate prayer for us. So as we begin this journey together and our time together, join me in prayer if you would, please. Lord, open unto us light for our darkness. Open unto us courage for our fear. Open unto us hope for our despair. Open unto us peace for our turmoil. Open unto us joy for our sorrow. Open unto us strength for our weakness. Open unto us wisdom for our confusion. Open unto us forgiveness for our sins. Open unto us love for our hates. Open unto us thyself for ourselves. Lord, Lord, open unto us. Amen. So it's my privilege to introduce Chris James. Chris is the Associate Professor of Evangelism and Missional Christianity at the University of Dubuque Theological Seminary.
Yeah, thanks everyone for being here. Some of you know that for the last, I guess it'd be about 4 years now, I've been bringing a group of my students here at the University of Dubuque Theological Seminary into Dane County, connecting with churches and other community leaders to reflect on the ways that the gospel blossoms and takes shape in different kinds of communities, rural and urban and otherwise. So that sort of was my first way of connecting with many of the folks, other partners on this project. I've also been engaged in a research project called the Dane Churches Project, where I've been just sort of collecting information, doing interviews, collecting surveys to really explore this question that drives a lot of my work. My teaching is about what's God up to here, and how is the church both a signal of what God's up to and also a partner in what God is doing and wants to do. And so some of you I know have taken the survey and been part of that project. I'm also, just to mention, involved with another initiative called Missio Madison, some of you may have heard of, that shares some similar DNA, trying to bring together communities of Christian leaders that are engaging questions about how God's at work and God's mission is taking place in this time and in your particular place. So very glad to be part of this project, and glad every time I get to make the 90-minute trip up to Madison, enjoy the beautiful place that you all call home. I think I'll pass it over to the final project partner just to say hello. It's John Anderson, who's the Executive Director of Collaboration Project. John, will you say hello to us?
Yeah, absolutely. Man, it's such a pleasure to be here. My name is John Anderson, and as Chris said, I work with Collaboration Project. We're about to celebrate our 2nd anniversary. So just being part of this project is a thrill, and I feel like evidence of having the right kind of friends. So just a joy. And my background is having worked as a pastor for about 2 decades prior to launching 2 years ago with Collaboration Project. And my passion really is seeing the church come together for the good of the community. And so just thrilled for what we're going to be talking about today and the work we're going to be doing over the next several years. So with that said, I'll be handing it back to Carrie.
Thanks, John. So among the folks who keep us organized is Jonna Georgia, who is the Awaken Dane program director. She has a little bit to share about the logistics of today, and she's also going to be a prime contact for you after today if you have questions about the project. Jonna, can you tell us how things are going to run?
Yes, hi everybody. So just a few notes about today. If you haven't already, we'd love it if you kept your video on, if you include your name of your church alongside your name. And if you have questions, there will be a Q&A at the end of this event. So at any time throughout, if you can throw those in the chat, we'll be sure that they get addressed. And just a reminder that this event is being recorded. And just normal Zoom etiquette, please make sure your microphones are muted and that sort of stuff. I am the program director for Awaken Dane, and so you all should have gotten an email from me with calendar invites and a reminder about this event. I am sort of the bridge between all those people that you just met and yourselves. So after this event, I will be sending you some follow-up information and resources. So we will be in touch, and excited to work alongside you. I am going to introduce or throw it over to Sarah Jane and Fiona, who are our consultants with the Missional Network.
Thank you, Jonna. Hi, I'm Sarah Jane Walker, and with me is Fiona Watts, and we both are part of the team at the Missional Network. And we are not in Dane County and are privileged to have been invited into this project to work alongside the steering committee, who it's been a delight to get to know. We are in Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada. So we're a little bit farther away from you all, but again, we're very privileged to be invited inside and to bring some of our experience in working with churches and church systems in addressing some of the questions that that Awaken Dane is really inviting you all and us all to step into. So we're really looking forward to that today. Fiona is going to introduce our first activity together, and I would like to invite her to give us some guidance and invite us in to get to know one another a little bit more.
Thanks, Sarah Jane. So you'll find as you learn more about Awaken Dane project and jump into it, that there's some really key practices that shape the work that we all do together. And one of them is the practice of listening. And so what we wanted to do today was give you all a chance to jump right in and have an experience of what it's like to do some intentional listening. So what we've done is we put together 3 very simple questions. And in a minute, Jonna is going to use her magic powers and she is going to send you out into random pairs. That is the plan. So the plan is that you are not going to end up with somebody that you know. So there's 3 questions and you'll see them in the chat and you'll see them on the screen there. So the first is to tell your partner your name and your location. Probably most of that's going to be on your screen already, but that's the first thing. The second question is, what do you love about the neighborhood that you live in? And the third question is, what is one hope you have for your neighborhood? So here is the special detail on this exercise. You need to listen to what your partner is saying so that when we come back together, we can hear some of the responses. And your job is to be able to report what your partner said. So it's not about your answers to those questions. It's about what did you hear your partner say. So when we all come back together, we're going to try and highlight a few of the responses. Obviously, we can't hear everybody because there's too many of you, which is a wonderful problem to have. So we will be calling on a few people to share what they have heard from their partner. Now you're going to have about 5 minutes in your breakout partners. And Jonna will send you off in a second and also send you a broadcast message about halfway through just to make sure that you're hearing from both people. Jonna, anything else you want to add there to the instructions?
No, I think that's it. I'm gonna send people on their way.
We'll see you in 5 minutes. I love the Zoom technology. It's so fun, the things that you can do. And we hope that you enjoyed your time with just one face to look at rather than multiple screens of faces. So what we're going to do now is just have a few of you share the responses to the questions. So who did you meet? What was their name? Where do they live? What do they love about the neighborhood that they live in? And what is one hope that they have for their neighborhood? So somebody on the steering team is going to start us off and pick somebody to share.
Sure, I've got someone in mind. And just as a reminder, this is not just like a get to know you game. This is really flexing and stretching our listening skills and sort of one of the rhythms that's active part of what we do in Awaken Dane. So Justin Markovsky, friend, would you be willing to share who you met and what they had to share about the questions?
Yeah, certainly. And as a part of my active listening, I took some notes even, so I'll refer to them if I need to. But I got to hang out with Bill Mulway, which was a pleasure. I'd not met him before, and he's part of Plymouth Congregational United Church of Christ on the east side. And he defined his neighborhood in both answers as kind of the greater Madison area. He kind of acknowledged that his immediate neighborhood, that he needs to reflect more and think specifically about those questions in that smaller context. But he says that for him, he loves living in Madison because he's found it to be a pretty good cultural and political fit to who he is and where sort of what he is comfortable with and resonates with. He's lived here since 1976, so he's had a good while to experience it. And one hope for the neighborhood that he spoke to is just recognizing a desire, a hope that some of what he says as concerns over the racial injustices, that there can be more movement on that front as a city. So that was Bill Mulway, and it was good to be with him.
Thanks a lot, Justin.
Yep.
Hey, this is Carrie from the WCC. I'm looking at the list of participants. I'm wondering if my friend Stacy Marisi Wheeler might be game to share what she heard.
Sure. I met Rebecca, who is from Journey Church. I met Rebecca and two of her children. which was delightful. And Rebecca, talked a little bit about the fact that she has a very friendly neighborhood, but the pandemic has really impacted getting to know people in deeper ways. And her hope for the neighborhood is that they could do something like, post-pandemic, like, oh, sorry. Of course, I have somebody walking into my house right when I'm speaking. But she's hoping that they could do something more like have a community get together, a block party, a community party, to help sort of keep that feel going. And that's her favorite. And that's Sunday. Who's barking? Sorry.
I can go ahead here and call on somebody. I feel like we're probably creating some high anxiety as people who don't want to be called on. So Tyler Nyland, I would love to have you go next if you're up for it.
I literally just texted one of us and said that I bet John Anderson's gonna pick me. I got to meet with Ann Ward, and Ann was a great individual to get to meet. She lives over on the west side around that. I'm not gonna say the exact location. Ann doesn't need her business out there that much, but I will say it was in the neighborhood. She's from Madison Christian Community, which involved 2 specific congregations, which is very interesting, from both a Lutheran and a United Church of Christ. So it's very cool. And she was talking about her own neighborhood and how she built relationships. Asked a little bit further about how that happened. And with her own neighbor, it was because they teamed up and were partners on shoveling snow and getting a car out of their someone who was stuck. And so being able to take a look at that and partnering and working together to solve the issues looked like a great place. And I think continuing in that expansion was what she was sharing about.
Adam Clausen, are you in the house?
What up, Reverend Parker? I am. Yes, I was with Miss Hannah from Ridgeway Church, and I think she was just complaining about her pastor, senior pastor Brian Peterson. Just kidding. I'm friends with Brian, and you're here, Brian. She is from Ridgeway Church, and she is one of the staff who lives in that Ridgeway neighborhood. And what she loves about her neighborhood is that there are lots of children, very economically diverse neighborhood. And so the access to that many families is a joy for her. A hope then is to connect more intentionally with the local schools, the nearby Hawthorne Elementary School, and being able to just explore how they can better support families through that venue as well.
How about one more?
Stephen's put his hand up. Stephen, let's unmute you so you can, there you are.
Yeah, I got to know Dean Ryerson, and he's a part of the Tamarack Trails community, which is actually right near me. I live on the west side of Madison, and he loves the sense of community that he has in his condo association. And he actually lives, his association's right by Wexford Ridge Apartments, which on the west side is, is an area where there's just low-income families, been a lot of issues, shootings, things like that on the west side. And so he really wants to connect his condo association to Wexford Ridge and begin to help Wexford Ridge just improve as a community and build trust between those 2 communities. He actually said it was really cool. He said there's a fence between their communities and he wants to take the fence down. There should be no reason to have a fence there. There should be trust within those communities. So it was really good to meet Dean.
That's great, thank you. So I hope that you all got a little taste, a little chance to meet somebody new and to learn a little bit about that person that you were with, and also to just get a taste of that listening practice. The listening practice, as I said before, is foundational to the Awaken Dane project, and it's also continually woven through all that you'll be doing together. And those two questions that you had a shot at today are actually two questions that come right out of the resource. So with that, I'm going to pass it back to Carrie, who's going to start us off talking about, from the perspective of the steering committee, what are the big dreams for this project?
Thanks, Fiona. So we actually wanted to have a chat as a group. We've spent a lot of time together over this past year thinking about, what we long for as spiritual people, as Christians, for the county, for the churches in the county, and for the county as a whole. And when I thought about my perspective on this, I went actually all the way back to my confirmation scripture, and to something that's also really pertinent to my work in ecumenical life, which is the passage from 1 Corinthians 12 on the parts of the body. For ecumenical work, the sense of the gifts of the diversity of the church. Our complexity is good, right? It's, one denomination or one expression of the church over here. We've got the elbow and the hand and the knee, and hey, I don't quite understand how that toe over there worships, or that weird elbow, how do they do their church meetings? But it's okay. We have our gifts and it's good. And I expand that beyond the church to the broader community. All of the parts of the body, all of their gifts are indispensable. And to get to the point where we can realize that dream in and among us, that all of the parts of the body, the church, the communities within which the church resides and has its being, all of them are indispensable. I think that's so crucial, and that we bring everything we have to that task. The other passage that had a lot of meaning for me is late in Acts with Paul's shipwreck, which is kind of a weird foundational passage for the church, right? But I think about that shipwreck and how they're at the edge of despair, right? And there they are, they land on Malta. And Paul says, the islanders showed us unusual kindness. And it flips the script. It's the folks who are there that show the hospitality. So often we think about it being the church that goes out on mission and solves the problems and does the things. And, my part of the big dream I have for Dane County is that we can realize it's all of us that have the gifts. That's the community that offers the hospitality as much as the church offering the gifts to everybody else. Colleagues, I wonder how you might jump off of that and how that might connect with your big dream for the county.
I'm happy to go. I'll try to keep it brief, but this is something, as I've been working among you the last few years, that's sort of been percolating out of the research that I've been doing. So I want to say there's like two main parts of my big dream for what God might be doing in and through this. The first is really for all the churches who participate, the 40 churches who are going to be part of this in 2 separate cycles. My hope, my dream is that there would be in each of these churches a growing and compelling sense of discovery that God is really on the move, this feeling, not only feeling, but sort of sensation, this discovery, this waking up. That's where the language of Awaken Dane comes from, waking up to the ways that God is active in their lives, in their neighbors' lives, and really to be able to say, not just I believe in God, I'm a Christian as a sort of an identity, but to be able to say, like the author does at the beginning of 1 John. This is what we've heard with our own ears, what we've seen with our own eyes. Jesus is actually alive, the Spirit is actually doing stuff, and we're going to testify to it. Like that sense of energy about God being active in the midst of the congregation, in my professional judgment, is actually the difference between a dying church and a thriving church. It's not about the numbers. It's actually whether the people, the regular folks in the church, know and believe that God is active among them and leading them on an adventure of faith. So that's the first part, is for those churches to have that active sense of God in their midst. And the second part is that sort of that reality in each of these 40 churches would make us open in new ways to one another across the different traditions, the different kinds of churches. That there would be we'd be able to see our differences in a new light when we recognize that God's actually out ahead of us, certainly bigger than our congregation, even our stream of Christianity. So, and not just so we can get along. Like, I mean, that's fine. Tolerance has its place, but really, in my Christian vision around this, that kind of unity is part of how God intends to bear witness to what He's done in Christ. So when Jesus prays in John 17, He says, praying for us, of course, that all of them may be one. Father, just as you are in me and I am in you, may they also be in us, so that the world may believe you have sent me. So the way we treat each other and recognize one another as kin and talk about each other and collaborate with each other is part of God's dream for our witness to the gospel. So my dream, that second part of the dream, is that an uncommon unity among the churches in Dane County would bear a compelling witness to the wider community, to the truth of who Jesus is. And that's what happened in Acts 2. The church enjoyed the favor of all the people because they were together, sharing bread, breaking bread together, praying together, dwelling on the apostles' teaching together. And they didn't need to hold church growth conferences. Like when that is the reality of your life, it says in Acts 2, the Lord added to their number. And my hope really is that God's kingdom would be realized in all those ways. So anyway, that's me. Who else on the team wants to say a little bit about the big dream?
I can go next here. Yeah, I thank you both, Carrie and Chris, for what you shared. It's always an inspiration to hear it from you again. And I think for me, I'll start with kind of the timing of all this. In light of COVID, in light of the racial unrest that our country is experiencing nationally and within our own community, I just have a sense that the timing of this kind of work and this kind of conversation feels like it's of God and of the Spirit. As we work with churches, and this last year we've worked with about 100 churches in Dane County already, and I know that other organizations who are partnering have similar kinds of points of contact. My observation is that the church broadly is in this moment of just reimagining themselves. What does it mean to gather? What does the future going to look like? What is the point of having buildings? How might we come together? How do we orient ourselves towards the community? All these questions are both up in the air and accelerated, I think, due to some of the realities of COVID in the world around us. And so just to be part of this conversation together within congregations, I'm really excited about what might happen and what could come out of that. And for me, as far as outcomes that are really thrilling, I think one, I'll just briefly reiterate what Chris, I heard him just saying, but that we would be sensing this uncommon unity within the clergy throughout the Dane County area and within the congregations and the communities they're a part of. One illustration I just think of that I think would just be like, man, this would be cool if this happened, is as new clergy came into the area, they just sensed like there's something in the water. I can't even figure out exactly what it is, where those who are leading the church communities just actually like each other and are in conversation with one another and sharing resources and ideas and really living out of the silos. And I think, unfortunately, that has not always been the case within our community. And then lastly, and this one really comes, this is probably the one I feel most strongly and personal about, is I've been working with kind of the partnership between nonprofits and social justice related or justice related work and the church for most of my career. And one of the things I've seen over and over and over again is churches wanting to do good in the community, local nonprofits that are direct service providers trying to make transformation, and the church just frankly isn't at the table, isn't really part of their thought of like how they can achieve their mission. And one of the things I would dream of as we come together is that we would actually start to see community transformation in measurable ways, so that all may flourish, and so that those who are most at risk, most vulnerable would actually see life transformation. And I think a lot of that's inspired out of Jeremiah 29 and throughout, I would say, just thread throughout all of Scripture. But that the work that happens within these cohorts, these conversations, would actually have tangible, direct impact for those both inside the church and outside the church, to the glory of God. And I would love to be part of that kind of work. So I think with that said, I will either start preaching or I should hand off. I'll probably just keep preaching. I need to hand it off to the next person.
Well done, John. Let me just offer maybe a complimentary view, and that is that I think this has real potential for leadership development. There are dimensions of this that are very localized, all the way down to the 4-digit extension of your zip code. You know, what is happening within your immediate neighborhood? And then at times we're going to punch out and really talk about area code issues, what's happening across Dane County, and even slightly beyond Dane County. And I think as a leader, being able to dial in and dial out is really important. And so I'm excited about that dimension of our community and the issues that we will grapple with over 2 years. I think the other thing is anytime we enter into a posture of listening, we make ourselves vulnerable. And I think as we develop as leaders, I think learning how to be in a posture of listening, discernment, being vulnerable amidst others within our congregational communities and even in the community of other pastors, I think is really important. And quite honestly, there's a lot of hard conversations that we have to have these days that happen internally and that happen externally. And I think this is going to be a really hands-on laboratory for your own development, to get better at those kinds of conversations, to remain self-differentiated in those conversations, to not get emotionally absorbed in ways that paralyze you or paralyze others, to stay non-defensive, to not project your reactivity onto others. I mean, all of us, me included, can get better at this. This is a lifelong journey for us as leaders. And I think this experience, the cohorts that you're a part of, the conversations that we're a part of, the plenary sessions that you'll be a part of will challenge that kind of leadership growth. And so I think that, in addition to everything else that all the other steering committee members have said, I would say that I think this is an incredible opportunity to grow as a leader. And I'm really looking forward to that dimension of the project.
So you've heard a little bit about what we've been dreaming. There's a lot of discernment that goes into the work we're going to be doing together in cohorts, as teams. Some of the folks that we didn't introduce to you yet are actually the Awaken Dane coaches. Fair warning, coaches, you're about to be on screen. They're going to be working side by side with you, and they're part of this dream too. So we wanted to make sure you had a chance to see them as well. We're talking about experienced pastors and leaders here who are going to accompany you on this journey if you decide to join Awaken Dane. So wave hi to Lisa Nelson, Colleen McNair, Christina Roberts, and John Anderson. So John's wearing multiple hats, both as part of the steering committee and leading up our team of coaches. Dreaming takes work, right? It takes imagination and it takes hands-on work, negotiation. Turning things into a reality takes time in partnership with one another, in partnership with God, in partnership with a community. Coaches, we've got just a couple of minutes here. Do you want to say anything by way of a word about the big dream you're going to be working on together with the cohorts?
I'd like to say that we're going to be learning together, that we're exploring new territory together. And so I have pastoral experience, I have experience as a coach, and I'm excited to see those two come together. But this is really a journey into the unknown, and I look forward to learning with others as well.
Christina or Collier, anything you want to add?
I just affirm everything that's already been said, and just humbled and thankful to be a part of this journey.
Same here. We've been kind of going through the material ahead of you to learn together, and it's just been really engaging. So I'm looking forward to what's ahead.
Any final words, John, from Coach's perspective?
I really appreciate what Lisa said, and I think coaches is both a helpful word. It can also be a little bit misleading at times. I think we're facilitating with you. We're co-journeying. We're trying to be there as a support to the group. We are not the in-house professionals. You can ask anybody on the steering committee, but we are excited to walk with you and really looking forward to this coming together.
So you're here today because you're seriously considering applying for Awaken Dane. And we wanted you to have a chance to learn a little bit more, to see who the real people were behind the materials that you've been reading, and to get a sense of the practices we'll be undertaking. We've got a very brief video for you, and then the next thing we'll have is time for Q&A. So Jonna, would you cue up the video for us?
You bet.
God is at work in our county. Congregations are called to participate in what God is doing right here where we live. Our churches have a long history of faithful presence in our county, which is rich heritage and foundation for us discovering what's next. Now is the time for our congregations to step more fully into joining with God in making all things new and redeeming the world. Awaken Dane is an opportunity to journey with other churches and discover together what it looks like in our county to be a part of God's ongoing redeeming work. Imagine discipleship and neighborhood engagement coming together and energizing how we live out our call as God's people. Bringing discipleship and neighborhood engagement together opens up a new imagination for following Jesus beyond Sunday morning. Imagine a community of church leaders learning with and from each other for the sake of their churches and our whole community's flourishing. This could have huge implications on building relational networks of practice as we work together, nurturing followers of Jesus. Awaken Dane provides a concrete, action-oriented way to guide your people through an experience that will deepen their faith and empower them to follow Jesus right where they are. Awaken Dane is a 2-year engagement. What would the rhythms of this journey look like for a congregation? Pastors join together monthly in a learning community facilitated by coaches. A small team from the congregation meets monthly with their pastor. All participants join together quarterly for a local gathering. With the support of the Awaken Dane team and robust resources, pastors can anticipate a commitment of 5 to 7 hours per month. And participating congregation members can anticipate a commitment of 3 to 5 hours per month. Now is the time to discover a fresh sense among the body of Christ in Dane County that God is on the move. Discover and embrace your unique identity and call, shaped by what God is doing right where we are. If you'd like to learn more, please visit our website at awakendane.org or find us on Facebook.
So just a few follow-up pieces on that. First of all, I like to just pause and say, it is amazing how many people are on this call and learning about Awaken Dane with us. We have representatives from 45 churches in Dane County with more than 15 denominations represented. And so this is just like a little zoomed out map so you can see we are all over, and we are many, and we're very excited that you're all here with us. As was mentioned in the video, the commitment for congregational team members is about 3 to 5 hours a month. So again, this is a 2-year program, and those congregational team members, there's 8 to 10 of them for each congregation. They're meeting monthly with their pastor to do activities and these facilitated meetings. And then they would also be asked to come to 4 large group gatherings over those 2 years. The commitment for pastors is about 5 to 7 hours a month, because in addition to what they're doing with the congregational teams, they are also meeting monthly with our coach staff, which will be on the 2nd Thursday of the month, and they start in July. So those congregational teams are about 8 to 10 congregation members, and we don't need those people to be identified today or even when you apply. But they will be starting in September, and pastors are starting in July. So that sort of gives you some time to work on identifying those congregation members and getting them on board. Ideally, 2 or 3 of those members live in the church's neighborhood, and that the members represent a cross section of your congregation and are they're doers. They're willing to prioritize participation and are particularly eager to engage with neighbors. And finally, what I'll say is that you saw the map, and it is our intention to group churches together. So we're hoping that every church has at least another church that's geographically close. And then, we'll have up to 20 congregations doing this program in the first cohort, and we'll have them split into 2 clusters based on that geography. And I'd be remiss if I did not mention that this is a completely free program, and the funding has been provided by the Lilly Endowment. So we're very grateful for that. Now, I'm not sure who I'm turning it over to, but I'm turning it over to somebody for some Q&A.
I would be happy to moderate some Q&A and toss it to my colleagues to help share the responsibility of giving good answers to people. One of the questions, I'm going to start at the bottom and work my way back actually, is whether the meetings will be done by Zoom for now. So the short answer is we're committed to being COVID safe. So as it is safe to gather in person, we really want to be able to gather physically. However, we don't want to put anybody's health at risk. So Chris, unless I'm mistaken, our first gathering is planned to be in person?
That's right. Yeah, I think we've got a park reserved, so an outdoor setting, and that's the intention. Yeah, the hope is that it will be safe to be able to gather in person. As we've all experienced, Zoom has its benefits, but also its limitations, and so we're hopeful about that. Can I maybe go to this next question as well? Just keep things moving, and if you have a question, please put it into the comments. There's a question about is it 8 to 10 members from the congregation, regardless of size? Now, on average, we'd love to have probably 8, because we know that just over the course of any 2-year period, you're likely to have a couple people that for some reason maybe won't be able to continue despite their best intentions. So we wouldn't want you to have a group of 4 that becomes a group of 2. But if you're a smaller congregation, say 35 folks, and 7 is a better target for you, or even 6 is a better target for you, that is somewhat negotiable. But we want you to have enough folks that even if there's a little attrition, it still is a dynamic group community that's journeying the whole way through. So
So
The
if
next
we're
question.
recruiting these folks, Chris, or anybody, what would excite them about participating?
Well, we haven't said that Lily's giving this money to this program as well as a number of other programs across the country with the hopes of helping congregations thrive. So basically all the elements that we built into Awaken Dane are driven toward what research suggests does help congregations thrive. And a big part of that is knowing your community, like your local geography, having supportive partners in the community, having sort of an active and dynamic sense of faith and engagement with God, engaging in new and sort of ancient Christian practices. So all that to say, I would hope congregational participants would see this as an opportunity to bring some life into the whole life of their congregation. Also, it is certainly, it's a discipleship invitation, really. I mean, as you're inviting folks onto this group, it's a new adventure with God. It's not just a church committee. Church committees can be great, but it's not just sort of, taking care of the maintenance of the building. It really is in a discipleship adventure here that you'll be inviting folks into.
So say I'm a congregation team member, what am I doing in this 3 to 5 hours a month? Is it a meeting? Is it homework? What's actually happening?
Do you want me to take that one?
Go for it.
Okay, I'll start it, and then Chris and John, whoever else can jump in. So the rhythm of work for the congregation teams, so that group of 8 to 10 people in the congregation who put their hand up and say, yes, I would love to be a part of this. The rhythm of work is based on an action reflection kind of model. So essentially, you do something, you come back together, and you figure out what it is that you're learning from taking that action. So each month, there is a facilitated, there is a meeting outline that is facilitated by the pastor. It's all laid out. There's not a lot of, it's pretty straightforward, but it's all mapped out for you. And in between those monthly gatherings, the people on the team are completing an action. So that's where that 3 to 5 hours gets factored in. So part of that time is the time that the team members are spending taking the actions in between the monthly meeting as well as the monthly meetings themselves. So much of what happens in this program is based on what you do. There certainly is there's ideas, there's conversation, there's discussion, there's thought pieces, all that's part of it. But the fruits of this program come out of what you do as congregation team members and the learning that you do together when you come back and say, this is what I experienced, this is what happened to me, here's a story of something that happened that I need to share with you all. And so it's an action reflection kind of model. So I don't know, Chris, if you want to jump in and add to that, but there's a start.
Sure, just very logistically, the congregational team gatherings with the pastor, those we anticipate will be 2-hour meetings. The other thing that sort of brings the number up is on the twice a year, bigger, longer events that we'll have. So the kickoff event in September will be like a 4-hour, I think, event that we have planned. And so that sort of inflates the average as you understand. So there'll be some months where there's a little bit more happening that would the congregation members would participate in. But otherwise, yeah, that was a very full answer. To the question from John Dipko, yes, congregations can either apply this time or next time. We anticipate, based on the interest thus far, we hope we'll maybe, we'll have 20 this time and maybe more applications than that. So it may even be that we might have to encourage you to reapply or indicate your interest a second time if we just don't have the room this first cycle. So if you're thinking about that, it certainly may be the case that now's not an ideal time, and we can begin having conversations with you about how to prepare your congregation for what might be possible 2 years down the road. John, did you have a comment there?
Well, actually, I was going to just ask Fiona if she could build on what you were sharing in the sense of maybe giving a couple examples of actions that maybe are not typical. I don't want to shortchange people's imaginations, but also help us just think in line with, and even clarify, like, is this experience going to mandate certain experiments, or is there freedom in that process? I think I know
Okay.
the answer, but others would love to know it too.
Okay, so in terms of an example of an action itself, you guys already did one today. So those two questions that you worked with at the very beginning, one of the actions that's built into the program is the folks on the congregation team go and talk to somebody in their neighborhood and ask them those questions. And they bring back their responses to those questions to their group and go, okay, what are we learning about how people are responding to these questions? So that would just be a very simple example of what an action would look like. And it's all about ways of engaging in your neighborhoods that is just part of how you do life, but with an intention to be listening and wondering about the stories that you're hearing and what do those mean and how do those connections get made between the various stories that everybody on your team is bringing to the table. So that would be my quick response to one action.
I'm seeing a request for some clarity between the church clusters and the congregational team commitment. Can we offer some clarity for folks on that?
I'm happy to comment on it if I understand the question correctly. I mean, what we mean by church clusters, the terms are still a little unclear, but we would have 20 churches in what I would call the first cohort of all going through this at the same time, but those would be in two separate groups of 10 in a cluster. So 2 clusters per cohort. There would be, we hope, and we intend to build into it ways that there would be connections between the congregational team members or the folks in your church who are going on this journey to connect with both and or participants in other churches in both your cluster or the other cluster in your cohort, particularly through the larger gatherings that we intend to do twice a year that would have up to, say, 220 people there across the different 20 churches that are participating. Am I getting at the question that you think is risen there, Carrie?
I think so, and I will encourage the questioner to respond if their question is not fully addressed, either here or to drop us an email and we'll address it more thoroughly. We had a query about whether there are Black churches interested in this program.
As you indicated in the comments there, Carrie, this is something we've been proactive and eager about. There are a couple that are we're in conversation with, and we're we'll see where that discernment leads, both for this cycle and for the next cycle. So is there anything else we'd want to say with respect to that? I mean, we have been very deliberate about all kinds of diversity being part of this journey, as we really we believe that the whole church needs the whole church in order to discern and to follow what God is leading us into in this period. So I see a couple questions here I can address, and then one I'm going to throw to you, John, about the long-term measurements. But in some churches, it might be appropriate to have an associate assistant or even an elder in the church be the sort of key point person. If it's anyway, we could talk about that if that seemed like potentially a hurdle for the pastor. We're certainly aware that in some churches, the pastors are bivocational, and that that extra amount of time would be prohibitive. So happy to talk in that situation. Other churches are very large, of course, and then there might be other reasons for wanting to have certain folks in charge of those of a journey like this. But it is our hope, let me just say that this is not sort of a side project, that this is seen as something that's happening in the heart of the life of the church, and that the experience of the congregational team with the pastor or the point person there is being digested and disseminating through other parts of the church as they learn from and with both that team and the wider group of churches that are involved. John, would you say something, John Anderson, about sustainability and where we're hoping this leads, since that's a piece of what you'll be taking on?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I thought you were calling on John Terrell because I know Chris and
well, he can speak to that too.
our John are speaking to some of the measurables in the process, but
Yeah.
I can speak briefly just to kind of the vision and where collaboration project, because I think that's probably why you're calling on me. So within the grant, collaboration project is named for the continuation of the grant post the completion of the grant cycle. And I think our dream there is that there would be an established network of churches with this kinship for one another and an orientation towards community. And so the dream would be that after this period, that there would be not only the existence of these established networks, but that there would even be something to build upon and to plug any churches even within those areas, so that there'd be kind of a geographically defined network of churches that are caring for one another, caring for their community, and continuing that discernment process together, both for their own benefit as well as the benefit of those around them. So I hope that helps.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. John Terrell, do you want to say anything? We've had some conversations about how we're going to measure whether this is effective and all that.
Yeah, I think indeed we want to collect stories. I think qualitative measurement's really important, but there are ways that you can quantitatively assess change over time longitudinally, and so we're working through a lot of that right now, trying to figure out the best ways to measure that, and that will unfold. Chris and I are meeting as we go. Psychometrics is sort of the science behind this, and it's complicated, but we will draw you into that, and I think you'll find the measurement to be really interesting. I think, like anything, we don't want this to just be a quick flash and then to disappear. We want it to really take root. And Chris, I saw something. I haven't had a chance to talk to you about this, but I saw that you were doing a follow-up study on the churches you studied in Seattle.
That's right.
Dating back 7 to 10 years ago or whatever it was. And I'm sure you're starting to recognize some things that made some of these churches, some of these church plants stick and flourish over time, and some things that didn't. And so we'll be doing the same kind of thing. What seem to be the ingredients that help our churches in Dane County to flourish? How do we really develop a neighborhood incarnational view of the way we see things? And we'll look at that over a period of time to make sure that indeed these values and what we've learned is really taking root in a deep way.
That's right. I've had a number of doctor of ministry students graduating on Saturday, and many of their projects are very much along the lines of what we're doing here. And so they were asking these questions about how to measure the growth and transformation in their congregation and in their own leadership skills and awareness. And so those are, we'll be paying attention to sort of the whole, what I like to call ecclesial ecology, hoping to have some sort of measurable growth in collegiality and networking and partnership, as well as, we'll be reflecting with the pastors at the front and the back to hear about what they've learned through the process, and with the folks in your churches, and taking some measurements to also see what happens with all kinds of numbers, sense of connection to their local community, maybe numbers of neighbors that they have a personal, first name relationship with. We're still working on exactly what might be the best measures, but we are intent on seeing what happens, especially in this first cycle, and bringing to bear whatever we learn into the second cycle as well.
There are some great reflections coming up here as we get into our last few minutes on what it means to be relevant and what neighborhood means. I think these are all things that we're going to be digging into in the course of conversations. How do we have these conversations about outcomes while we prioritize being people of relationship, right? These are really deep conversations, and part of why we're going to be in this work for 2 years. So we don't skew things in one direction or the other. I wonder if any of you have final words on this Q&A time so we can respect folks' commitment to this event and let them out the door without them being here too long.
Just very briefly, we are certainly available to talk with you further if your interest is piqued, but you've got a number of questions or concerns. We're happy to talk. On a number of occasions, one of us has Zoomed in to join a board meeting or a session meeting or something like that to talk with others in your church who may be important in making a decision like this. But yeah, the big thing I want to say is even this turnout and many other signs really do point to God being up to something fresh, God doing something beautiful, and we're excited about whomever God brings along for this phase of the journey with us. I believe God's going to do something quite unique, and we'll have a lot to bear witness to on the other side. So those are my last words.
I might add that the church has been in a season where we've been sort of celebrating or living in space, but there is a difference between space and place. There's a deep theological difference. And so we have at this really important inflection point an opportunity to learn together as we venture back into place and what placemaking means. And so I think just fortuitously, it's really a wonderful time to be engaging this cohort as we move back into physical presence from virtual presence or whatever it's been for the last 15 months.
We have brought Jana Georgia back on screen. She's our program director. We know you're going to have follow-up questions. We know you're going to want to know what the next steps are, and she is the go-to person. So Jana, would you share next steps, your email for questions, all the critical wrap-up stuff, please?
Yeah, absolutely. So everyone here should have my email address if you registered with me. Applications are due May 24th, and Carrie shared that the decisions will be communicated by June 11th. After I am able to get this recording cleaned up and uploaded, you will all receive a follow-up email from me with a copy of the recording, a copy of the video we shared, a link to the application. Those things are also going to be available on our website, awakendane.org/resources. All of those recordings and links are all on that page together. But as Chris said, next steps now is talk to your leadership. If there's interest there, we encourage you to share a recording of the video. If there's questions, the team here is available and happy to meet with your leadership team. I would be your best contact person and can help. I think it was Justin Markowski asked a question in the chat of who to reach out to with specific questions. And I'd encourage you to reach out to me, and I can sort of pass you on or forward you to maybe the best person, because we all have sort of different pieces involved here. So, and then just a reminder that the cohort pastors will begin on July 8th with those monthly pastor meetings, and the congregational teams will begin on September 25th with our first large group event. So those are the next steps. You will get an email from me by the end of the day today. All right, I think that is everything for us, folks. So we will be in touch, and again, reach out for any other questions. We really appreciate you coming.
Blessings on your day, everybody. Take good care.